The issue is that when empires decline and die, they do not so peacefully. And so what we're seeing right now, as you say, is a decline of the American empire. But when an empire declines, it engages in certain counterproductive activities. So, for example, it engages in too many overseas military commitments. So what we're seeing, of course, it was the Venezuela kidnapping of Maduro. Now we're seeing that a huge armada has assembled around Iran. It is possible that the Americans will strike Iran at any time, possibly today, tomorrow. But very quickly, Trump has talked about annexing Greenland and Canada. He's talked about blockading Cuba. He's talked about regime change in Colombia, in Mexico. So this is what an empire decline looks like. It's very, very traumatic for the world and for America itself. On the domestic front, you see ruptures everywhere. So if you've been following the news about Minnesota, there's almost like a civil war going on where you have a heavy militarized opposition going on. You have the Minnesota local police who are being harassed by ICE agents, these off-duty police officers who are of color, Latino or Black. They're being stopped by ICE agents and being asked for their papers. And I think this is all very deliberate to provoke them. Tim Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota, has deployed the National Guard to guard certain buildings. So you have three possible forces, the local police, the National Guard, and the ICE and border control, all in Minneapolis right now. And as you know, just yesterday, an American citizen who was 37 years old, Alex Pretty, he is an ICU nurse. He was executed in cold blood. We can only call an execution based on the video evidence so far. I understand that the Trump administration said that the ICE agents were acting in self-defense. If you just look at the videos, if you just look at eyewitness testimonies, he was a man who was disarmed and then he was shot in the back. And then the ICE agents start to round up eyewitnesses and confiscate their mobile phones. So it seems as though these ICE agents are, for whatever reason, they're trying to incite a civil war. And there's fear that it's possible that one ICE agent might be shot by a sniper at some point, which would allow Trump to declare the Insurrection Act. But also possibility of a shutdown in Washington, D.C., where the government no longer functions. There's all this talk about the Epstein files and how the entire billionaire class in America is implicated in these Epstein files. So right now in America, it's really a powder keg. And this powder keg can go off at any moment. And there's talk of ICE being deployed to other cities as well throughout the nation. Again, Trump is just looking for any pretext right now to declare the Insurrection Act, which would allow him to delay the midterm elections. And yeah, it's a very, very dire situation for both Americans and for any citizen of the world right now. So what's happening is that the hypocrisy of the American empire has been exposed. Everyone understands that the American empire only believes in might is right. In fact, Mark Carney has said this as well at the World Economic Forum in a speech that received a standing ovation from the audience. So across the world, there's dismay, there's disgust at the brutality, at the mafia tactics of the American empire. I mean, the fact that the Americans can just violate a nation's sovereignty and kidnap their president. And then not only that, but to hold him before, he was put in a van and he was paraded on the streets of New York. And now he's being tried, even though according to national law, as the president of Venezuela, he does have immunity. And he's being charged with domestic American laws for example, gun possession, which is just ridiculous. So this entire thing is a farce. And now, Trump is talking about annexing Greenland. I know that at the World Economic Forum that he sort of compromised with the Europeans, but I guarantee you in a week or two, in a month or two, he's going to go back to threatening to annex Greenland. And it's possible he sends in some troops to annex Greenland. So just the pure mafia tactics of the American empire, I think, has disgusted the entire world, including in China. And I think that if you examine what's happening in the United States right now, it's clearly a civil war. It's being fought between the Democrats and the Republicans. I think behind these two parties lies different vested interests. So when the Republicans are mainly the financial global elite, as represented by Wall Street, and that's the old power. And they came into power through Clinton and Obama. Then sitting with Trump is the new money, the Silicon Valley elite, as exemplified by Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance. And, they want to create an AI surveillance state. So these are the two major factions fighting out in America right now. And these citizens, unfortunately, are just pawns in a larger game. And that's why my great fear is that what's happening in Minnesota will escalate, will spread across the country, and it will engulf the nation, especially if Trump decides to take a third term, which I suspect he will. The great danger right now is that Trump is creating loyal bases among the military. Okay, so I think that Peter Hegseth and his reforms in the Pentagon, it's really to weed out people who are not loyal to Trump and create a army that is more loyal to Trump, so that when he does seek a third term, essentially when he launches a coup d'etat against the Constitution, he will have the muscle in order to enforce this. ICE is turning out to be his secret police to get Gestapo, and they're being very loyal. I mean, the fact that they shot an armed woman, Renee Good, and then now they've shot another innocent American citizen, means that they are increasingly violent and therefore more and more beholden to Trump, who is their warlord. So that's a great danger right now in America, where Trump could be the Julius Caesar of our age, which is what also Spengler predicted in his works. And I think that the trends are clear. I think that we're moving towards that direction. And I hate to say this, but given historical trends, it seems as though Trump will succeed. It seems that he will get his third term, and it seems that the military will be more and more loyal to him, especially as he seeks more and more victories overseas. So I'll make a point that in Donald Trump's national security strategy, okay, he argues that multilateralism is dead. It's a lie. And multilateralism is just a pretext for the Europeans, the British, to free ride on American military power, on American generosity, basically. So he says in the future, America is going to put self-interest first, like above everything else. Okay, and so America says this, and I think everyone should be doing this, right? China should be doing this. The UK should be doing this. Europe should be doing this. Okay, you should put national self-interest above everything else, because that's the world we live in. Okay, the American empire, it's dying. America is trying to cling on to this empire, and now it's just devolved in this mafia empire where might makes right. And so every nation needs to act in its own best interest. And right now, as you say, the EU, it's a huge bureaucracy that's not capable of being innovative, that is not capable of being strategic. So it just continues to be what it is, and it's leading to disaster. Right now, what the EU should be doing is trying to negotiate as quickly as possible an end to this war in Ukraine, because it is not helping anyone that this war continues. And the longer that this war continues, the more people will suffer. But instead, the EU is continuing this war in Ukraine because honestly, these are bureaucrats and they do not know what else to do. They don't want to lose face. They don't want to admit they're wrong, and they don't want to suffer the consequences for their mistakes. And so the EU right now has become its worst enemy. This bureaucracy is blinding these nations from making strategic long-term interests. I think the Americans are extremely corrupt. And so, Trump just recently announced that he's going to increase the Pentagon budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. America already outspends everyone else in the world in military spending. There's no military in the world that can actually challenge the American military. So why is he spending this much money? Well, the answer is kickbacks to the military-industrial complex, okay? So this money does not mean troops will be paid better. In fact, many American troops are actually on food stamps. It's just ridiculous. It does not mean a more effective fighting force. It means more corruption. It means more weapon systems that have no relevance in modern warfare. It means the Golden Dome, right? And, this 5% NATO spending, it's really the vassalization of Europe, where, now these European states, to please Trump, they have to pay off these American military contractors like Raytheon and Boeing. That's the entire point of all this. It's not to, start more wars. It's not to make NATO much more potent against Russia. It's just so that Trump's friends can continue to steal some more from the people. I'm sorry. And this is why the war in Ukraine will not end. It's a huge money laundering operation. 1 million Ukrainians have died already. Putin has offered peace countless times. This war is over. But unfortunately, this is not about winning the war. It's not about defending Europe. It's not about countering Putin's aggression. It's all about money laundering. That's all it is. So I think that China is very conservative with its foreign policy. And so what's happening in the South China Sea, there is a lot of conflict, but it's caused by the fact that China is blockaded by the first island chain. And if America will ever choose to embargo China, first island chain, then China will lose access to overseas markets, which is the lifeblood of the Chinese economy. So China imports a third of its food from overseas. China imports 3/4 of its oil from overseas. And all that passes through the Strait of Malacca. So it's very easy for America to blockade China. So just for its long-term strategic best interest, China needs some military presence in South China Sea. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that there will be a time when America has to retreat from Southeast Asia because, it's in civil war or because it's bankrupt or for whatever reason, okay? Which means that Japan will most likely become the dominant naval power in Southeast Asia. And China needs to prepare for the day when it has to confront Japan militarily in the South China Sea. Look, if you just look at the history between these two countries, there's a lot of conflict, okay? So I think that the Chinese are probably happy with America being the dominant hegemon in the South China Sea because the Americans believe in global trade. But the Japanese, I mean, it's a resource-poor island, and so it needs to build resource colonies throughout Southeast Asia. It has this history of doing so. So Japan will be militarily aggressive, and so China needs to preempt this strategically. So I think these are the two factors driving a lot of China's South China Sea policy, and I think it's very, very conservative, and I think it makes sense. So Prime Minister Takaichi, like a month ago, said that Taiwan was of vital strategic interest for Japan. And this was very provocative. This was very controversial because for the longest time, it was basically like, let's pretend that Taiwan is both independent and a part of China. If you don't say anything, we won't say anything. Okay. So that was just a status quo for the longest time among the major powers in Southeast Asia. And for Takaichi to say that we will defend Taiwan if it were to be attacked, and that is a direct provocation towards China. And this relationship between Japan and China right now is extremely, extremely strained. And we can expect an escalation over the next few months. Now, if you just look at this from a game theory perspective, the issue of Japan right now is its aging crisis. And in 20 years' time, it's not going to have the economy, the population, and the political will to fight a war with China. And in 20 years' time, it's possible that China is so strong that it's able to reunify with Taiwan economically, in which case China is not in a position to blockade Japan, in which case Japan starves. So Japan's not thinking like, okay, well, can we take on China militarily? It's more like the clock is running out on us, and we need to act now, okay? The Americans are about to leave Southeast Asia. China is on the rise. We need to seek decisive confrontation now or never. It has to be a 5-year time frame because in 20 years' time, we'll be too old to fight a war. So I hate to say this, but that is a strategic calculation for the Japanese right now.